Every tree has roots, every life has branches, and every adoption has a story. Some stories begin with questions, some begin with loss. All of them are rooted in love and the search for connection. This is Janet Monroe, and this is Roots and Branches Adoption Stories, a podcast where real stories take root and grow. Because the more we share, the more we understand, and understanding helps us grow. Now, here's Janet Monroe.
Hello, and welcome to Roots and Branches Adoption Stories. I'm Janet, and I am your host. The roots represent the birth parents, the adoptee, and the adoptive parents, while the branches represent the far-reaching effects of adoption on siblings, extended family, and future generations. Today, we share the story of Deanna, a woman whose life has been shaped by adoption from the very beginning. Adopted by her grandparents as a baby, she grew up navigating secrecy, confusion, and the moment of discovery at just 5 years old that would forever change how she saw family. Out of that experience came her belief in transparency and honesty, values she carried into raising her own children. Deanna never imagined that she would be the mother of 7, but life had a different plan. From blending families to having children of her own, to opening her heart and home to 2 teenagers who needed a safe place. Deanna's story is one of resilience, compassion, and the true meaning of family. So welcome, Deanna. I'm so happy that you could be here today to tell your story.
And absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm sorry, please.
Okay. It's all right. We can talk over each other. People know it's live then, right? Know that everything's happening the way it's supposed to. So start off with telling us about your early childhood, about what you know about your biological parents and how your grandparents came to adopt you.
Well, my grandparents got custody of me when I was 6 months old, so I don't actually remember living with my birth parents. I actually did not see them from the time that I was 6 until I was a little over 3. And when they were introduced to me as Miss Sandy and Mr. Scott. So it wasn't even made clear to me immediately that they were actually my biological parents. At that point, I didn't know that I was adopted. It was kind of a family secret.
Family secrets. All right. So at age 5, you learned you were adopted. So what do you remember about that moment, and how did it affect your trust in your adoptive parents?
It was actually a bit of a heartbreaking moment because at that point, because my grandparents adopted me, I thought that my mother was my much older sister, and so she had a fight with my adopted parents. And out of anger, she essentially told me that she was my mother, not the witch. That's not the correct word, but it's the one that we're going to use. That was raising me was not my mother, and that she wanted me to call her mama from now on. And it was very confusing because you think you know your place in the world, even as a little person, only to discover that no, you're not even who you thought you were.
So your grandparents, did you call them mom and dad?
I did. I called them, I called them mother and daddy.
Okay. And that changed when your mom said she wants you to call her mom?
Well, yes and no. To this day, even though both of my adoptive parents are deceased, I still call them mother or mama and daddy because they are the people who, the bad nights when you're sick or the celebrating moments, they were the people that were there. They earned that honor regardless of what my relationship with them was like. I never actually called my biological mother, mom, mama, any of the words that she wanted because by the time I was old enough to think my way through that confusion of who are you, how are we actually connected, I realized that she had not earned any of the respect that goes along with those words.
It's something that's very difficult. I know when I met my son, um, that was a hard time as well, because his mom was always going to be his adoptive mom, because that's who raised him, who loved him and took care of him. And I was just the birth mother. That's it, but it's
Now,
still.
I do call my biological father dad now, but that didn't occur until after my adopted father had passed away.
Yeah, I can understand that. So you said that transparency is a guiding principle in your parenting. How did your own childhood shape that value?
Well, like I said, it was when I was little. It was kind of the family secret that I was adopted. Obviously, everyone knew, but no one spoke about it in front of the little kid, and so there were lots of conversations that would just cut off midway when you walk into the room. Questions that nobody wants to answer because nobody wants anybody angry with them. As a teenager, they started to I started to find out all the things that I had been lied to about the struggles that my biological mother and father had had. Um, like I found out that my biological father had a nervous breakdown because my mother wanted to be a party girl, not a mother. And that was something that I didn't know about until I was an adult. Because there's certain conversations that you don't want to have with little people. They won't understand.
Right. And I can tell you that after I gave birth to my son, it was never ever mentioned again in the family, because he wasn't there. He was gone. Nobody ever asked about it. So I'm looking at it from both sides here, how they're keeping it from you, and how, being a birth mom, everything was kept away from me as well for in the future. So I know it's a lost feeling, right? When you start to learn that that's not who you are, and you have to try and figure out who you really are,
Mm-hmm.
where you belong. So
And
I can
I think I
feel.
got lucky that I didn't feel like my role shifted too much. But as an adult, I recognized that my biological mother wasn't welcome. Like, I didn't see her like you would expect her to be around. She became the black sheep of the family.
So when you met your husband, you stepped into a blended family, right?
Yes, ma'am.
With how old were you when you met your husband, and when that relationship started? Because I think you became a mom to his son at that time.
Yes, ma'am. So I was 22 when we met, and we had been together for about 6 months when I met his son. I was very, very careful with that because I remembered my own childhood of the hushed, hushed. I didn't, and my biological mother constantly bringing boyfriend after boyfriend after boyfriend to meet me, saying he was going to be my new dad. There was too much stress there. So I made sure that I didn't meet him until I was sure me and his dad were going to be together for a while.
And how long have you been together now?
Now we have been together for nearly 20 years, so I think I fulfilled that requirement.
I think so. I think so. So you once thought you couldn't have children, and then you went on to have your own. Okay. So what was that journey like?
Oh my gosh. So that was a rough, heartbreaking journey. I always knew that I wanted to be a mom because there's a special connection there between a mom and her kids. But when I was 16, I was diagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome and told that I would never carry a baby, that if I managed to get pregnant, it would always end in heartache no matter what I did. And so when I met my husband, I made sure he understood that if he decided to be with me, his son was going to be the only child. That was what we were thinking. And I also let him know that I had lived with that reality for so long, I knew I was going to adopt. And he had to be okay with that. Otherwise, we would never work.
And then you went ahead and had your own children.
Yeah, I mean, life is funny that way. We had been together for about a year when we found out that we were pregnant. I was blown away, stunned, traumatized, 100 other words that go along with finding out you're going to be a parent for the first time. Um, and, from that point on, our family just kept growing. I mean, for somebody who is never supposed to be able to have any children, and then I had 3 biological children of my own, it was a place I had to get comfortable with, but I appreciate it and I love it.
And after you had your biological children and you mixed them with your husband's son from his first relationship, then you ended up adopting.
Yes, ma'am.
Am
So
I
you
correct?
said 2 earlier. It was actually 3. Before our youngest
Okay.
was born, when our second youngest was actually a baby himself, we developed a very close relationship with another family, and that family fell on hard times because mom made some choices that maybe she could have made better choices, and her children were going into the system, and that's never a good outcome for anybody. And so what we thought was going to be short term, we took them, became long term / permanent.
And were you able to adopt them legally?
Unfortunately, no, they do not have our last name. We were never able to legally adopt them, but we were their guardians right up until the day that they turned 18, and each and every one of them is still a member of our family. I mean, I actually had an angry phone call from my oldest daughter just yesterday because I hadn't sent out the Christmas activities list yet, so she didn't know when we were doing what.
That sounds like a good thing. So the oldest daughter is one that was adopted, right? These 3 children were older than your other children.
Yes, ma'am. There's actually a 5-year age gap between our oldest biological child and our youngest adopted child.
And everybody blended together well as when you brought those children into the family?
Surprisingly, we got very, very lucky. Because I think a lot of it was because they already knew us, so they kind of knew what to expect, and they weren't thrown into a stranger environment where they had to learn all the rules. But the relationships that our adopted children and our biological children had already been forming, it was almost like mentor and mentee. It was very beautiful to watch.
Out of the children that you adopted, there was 3. Were they girls, boys, mixture of the
It's actually a boy, a girl, and a boy, oldest to youngest, or
boy, girl,
youngest
boy?
to oldest, either way.
And you did
So
mention that those teens kind of became protectors of your younger kids.
Yes, ma'am. That's something I see with a lot of blended families is from my perspective anyway, when you have older children that come in, they kind of want to protect the little ones from everything that they've been through. They never want them to have those experiences.
And you can't blame them for that, can you?
No, ma'am.
So looking back, what do you feel that adoption taught you from both sides, from both as someone who was adopted and as an adoptive parent?
So as a parent, that's easy. Um, it's all about love. Everything that you do, you cannot be in it for aggrandizement. You can't be in it for your own ego. It has to be because somebody needs love and you have the love to give. And if that's the basis of what you're doing, everything else will work itself out in the end. From the perspective of a child, secrets don't help anyone. At the end of the day, secrets almost always cause rifts and heartache. It's not worth it.
So if you could give one piece of advice to parents that are raising adopted children today, what would it be?
One piece of advice to parents raising adopted children. It's not any different than raising your own. Children are children regardless of what they're going through, and they all need the same amount of love whether they came from you or not.
That's what I found from the people that I've talked to. It's the unconditional love that you give them that just makes the world. All right. So since this, you are working in a field now of neurodivergency, and that's a word that was never around when I was growing up. So
Yes.
how does that affect? How did you get into that, and being adopted or raising adopted children or having your own children? How did that impact what you decided to do?
Well, I mean, I got an early childhood diagnosis with ADHD, and you use the word neurodivergent. That's the one I love. I use it all the time. It's an umbrella term for anyone who has a way that they think that is slightly different or off cue. So that could be ADHD, autism, OCD, depression. There are so many things that fall under that umbrella. Um, and so this really started because, like I said, I had an early childhood diagnosis. My husband also had a teenage diagnosis of Asperger's, which is used to be a classification of autism. And so when I met his son already had an autism diagnosis. So we kind of knew about the genetic components at that point and kind of anticipated that our children, if we had them, might have some issues. Well, it turned out that each of our biological children has a different set of neurodivergent diagnoses from their pediatrician. And then it just so happened that the three that we adopted also had neurodivergent diagnoses. And so we have this giant family of people who think a little bit out of step, who hear a little bit different tune to the world. And so we had to learn a different way of thinking and functioning as a family. And after my husband and I decided to start our own business, it just made sense that there are so many people out there that are not educated on what neurodivergence is, what it actually means to the people that it affects, that I knew those were the people that I wanted to help. And so that's where we're at 3 years later, a thriving radio show of our own, a thriving marketing agency where we help neurodivergent entrepreneurs, and an NPO in the works where we'll be helping neurodivergent children and teenagers receive training that's actually designed for them instead of the training that's designed for neurotypicals.
Are you finding that there is more neurodivergent children now than there were before? Or
Absolutely.
I guess it probably is because the term wasn't used before.
Yes, so it is a new term. It's only really been used for about the last 30 to 40 years. But between environmental factors, between traumas that are inflicted on people that make symptomology worse, better diagnostic practices, like there's so much that goes into it. But yes, there are many, many more identified neurodivergent children than there ever have been before.
So you're saying that this is a term that's about 30 to 40 years old. Yes, I was in high school probably 60 years ago. Oh my goodness, I'm really aging myself here. But there was no such thing at that point in time of ADD or ADHD or anything like that. It wasn't a word that anybody knew about. So there was, of course, different kids in the class that looked at things differently. And I'm sure that I could pick out people that were different, but there was never any terminology for it. Like you had the typical class clown and somebody who doesn't want to pay attention to what's going on, but wants attention themselves, kind of thing. But yeah, so it's almost like a new 30 to 40 years ago. So this is something new that's come about.
Probably it's an evolution.
And because we have, with the technology that we have today, we get to talk to more people and learn more about it. It's not like each school is by itself kind of thing, right? It's
right.
A way that everybody gets to know something about it, and it's something that we should all learn about.
Right. I mean, like I said, it's not a you or a them versus us. We're all human. It's just there's a group of us that our brains work just a little bit different, and we see things in a way that is unusual or alien to everybody else.
But everybody works together to make it work. Correct?
Yes, ma'am.
That's the way the world should be, right?
Yes,
Everybody
ma'am.
work together to make it happen and to make things work. Okay. All right. So thank you very much, Deanna. I really, really enjoyed talking to you. And I love what you're doing with the neurodivergency and the fact that you've actually started things to make things happen for people to be more aware of everything that's going on. So you're definitely going to make a difference. The story that you were adopted, and because you were adopted, you were quite willing to adopt others. And as you said, you knew at some point in time that you would always adopt. How important do you think adoption is to the world?
I can't speak to the actual number of children that are out there, but there are thousands, if not millions, of children that they only want one. And this is going to sound corny, but they only want one thing for Christmas this year, and that's somebody to love them the way that they deserve to be loved. So, do I think adoption is important? Absolutely, 1000%. It is possibly one of the least discussed and most important topics of our age, is giving children a chance to be loved.
So some people I've talked to think that adoption is a legal form of human trafficking. Opinion?
I think that no matter where you look in this world, you are going to find examples of the worst of humanity, and adoption is no exception. So, do I think that there are bad, horrible practices going on? Of course, because we're all human, and there's always that one guy that doesn't want to march to the beat everybody else's beat. But overall, you can't let one or two examples of travesty stop something that is overall really great.
I agree with you on that. I think adoption is something that is definitely needed because there are so many children that need to be loved. And there are so many people that want to love children that have to have the opportunity to be able to do that. You know, I am so grateful for the parents that adopted my son because they gave him that unconditional love. And it's just something that you're not going to get away from. No matter what, you can't give up on adoption because it's a chance for people to have that unconditional love for children and a chance for children to receive that. And it's so, that love is so important to how they grow up and who they become, knowing that they have that love. Right? So,
yes, ma'am.
Yes,
I mean, institutions can't raise people. Institutions raise broken machines. People raise people.
And I was talking to a lady the other day, and she has an adopted daughter, but she says that she has the village because her daughter is adopted, but she has the brother and sister that were adopted by somebody else, and they all help each other and keep in touch. So it's a village to raise the children.
Well, I mean, and adoption, if you ever dreamed of having a large extended family and you have the means, adoption gives people the ability to create families that would have never existed otherwise.
Yes, totally. So Deanna's story reminds us that adoption can touch our lives in ways we don't expect. First as a child navigating secrets, then as a mother building a family rooted in honesty and love. Her journey shows us that family is not defined by blood alone, but by the choices we make to show up, to protect, and to nurture the next. If you connected with today's story, or if you need more information about Deanna's neurodivergency program, please subscribe, comment, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. You can listen to all episodes at Roots and Branches, adoptionstories.com. I'm Janet. Thank you for joining me in breaking the silence and stigma around adoption.
Thank you for tuning in to Roots and Branches, Adoption Stories, where every tree has roots, every life has branches, and every adoption has a story. Got an adoption story you want to tell? Want to learn more about adoption stories? Then visit rootsandbranchesadoptionstories.com.